Hello and welcome back to this Downloaded Crusade. This video is a short update to my video and research I did into the Warner Brothers DVD rot issue. Ever since I posted that video and I compiled a list of every affected title that I found reported, in addition to titles in my own collection that I had DVD rot problems with, I've had a lot of people comment or email me or ask me if I've had any sort of resolution or if I've heard back from anybody at Warner Home Video or basically what happened. And unfortunately, all I've been able to do is basically tell them that, just the communication sort of dried up. And of course, the pandemic happened and Warner Brothers was completely restructured after the merger. And so I just really it just sort of died out, and all I could tell people is you just basically have to try and go find replacement copies and do the best you can, or buy them as Warner Archive MOD DVD reissues, which will not obviously have the rot issue. So I had been just rather quietly looking for one title at a time at decent prices, or trying to find copies that weren't rotted, and then having to buy a used copy and just roll the dice on it and hope it didn't have rot issues. Because of course, when you buy a DVD in a store used, you don't know if it could have been separated from the original box set pressing, and so you've got a defective disc again and you're screwed. Then you have two dead data discs that just don't do anything but take up space. So I had been able to replace one or two things. I just was keeping an eye out on eBay, or when I went to various stores that sell DVDs, and site sales and different things. So I'd been replacing a few here and there, but I still had a large number of titles that I needed to replace, and a lot of titles that were unfortunately out of print, and I couldn't replace outside of buying another expensive copy of the original pressing and hoping those discs weren't rotted as well. Then I started to see more and more people having the disc rot issue happen to themselves, and unfortunately this is one of those things that you don't really know about until it happens to you, because it's not discussed very much. I first read about it in a home theater forum thread and thought, oh, well, that must be sort of a fluke. Then it happened to me, and then I started digging around, and I went through every disc I had and tried to find every disc that I had problems with. So when that would happen, I started, telling people, I went through the same thing, and I even made a video about it and compiled a list. So here's sort of what I found out. And then I had more people ask me if I'd heard anything back from Warner Brothers. So I decided I was going to try again, now that it had been it's been practically 2 years since I originally was emailing and dealing with people at Warner Home Video, just to see if I could get any sort of response. And because more and more people are having this issue, and I've had a lot of people ask me if I'd heard anything, I decided I was going to try and present everything nicely and all together. So I got all my old email correspondence with Warner together, and I just wrote a new letter, a new email, I should say, just trying to get an update. And obviously there are many things going on in the world, and it's not a gigantic earth-shattering problem, but it is something that should be addressed at some point in an official manner, because it is a very large problem that is unfortunately rather widespread. And I tried to come up with various possible solutions. So I put some of those in there as well. I thought probably the easiest thing to do, obviously not every title is in print, and they would be limited to being able to replace what was actually available in print, whether still available in warehouses or via the Archive MOD service, which can thankfully take care of most affected titles, but unfortunately not everything. So anyway, I thought the easiest thing to do might be how a lot of other labels have been handling defective discs, where you contact them, you go through their process, and then they just send you a replacement disc, like Criterion did with their defective Citizen Kane Blu-ray. And I'd actually just gone through that and finally gotten the disc replacement in the mail. And since they don't have to mail you the case, they just mail you the disc. It's a lot cheaper in terms of shipping. So I figured it would probably be rather easy to replace titles with archive copies, because then all they have to do is order a few more in terms of the manufacturing, because they're just pressing new copies as MOD. So when people had defective films that could be replaced, they could just literally get a disc mailed to them once they, proved the ownership and sent photos and everything. Because I thought the original response I was getting of having to send in entire out-of-print box sets and lose the great packaging, and also send in discs that were perfectly fine, and then have to pay all that to send in box after box set, and then it didn't seem like a great idea, and it was also going to get very expensive, and then you'd lose the packaging, and you'd have to send in discs that were perfectly fine and you didn't have problems with. So I was trying to come up with any potential solution that might make it easier for everybody involved. So I wrote a nice detailed letter explaining what I had gone through, and that now, since I've tried to compile every affected title that people have talked about, I've had a lot of people ask me if I'd heard anything. So I was just trying to touch base, essentially. So anyway, I got a nice short little reply thanking me for my email, and that they would look into it. So I was like, okay, at least they got it, because I had to send it to the new Warner Home Video contact, because of course, since the merger, everything is shuffled around a bit, and I didn't even know if there was going to be anybody to answer an email for the home video division, or if they even had a Warner Home Video contact email at this point anymore. So that's who I sent my email to, and I'll put that information up and in the description as well. So at least I knew that they had actually gotten my information and gotten my email, and that's all I'd really heard. And then all of a sudden, I come home one day and I notice there's a box on the doorstep. This box, actually, right here. And I'm like, well, I haven't ordered anything recently. I don't know what this is. It's quite a substantial box. And I open it, and then I see there's a bunch of discs inside. Then I see there's an actual Warner Brothers shop slip, which I was like, wow, I haven't seen one of those in a long time. And then I look in the box, and I notice all of these familiar titles that I've had a pile of useless discs all this time. So without any fanfare, without any of the hassles I was looking at having to go through the first time around, they actually sent me almost every affected title that I needed to replace as a Warner Archive MOD disc. And apparently, they took the time to actually look at my correspondence and the list of titles that I'd put together that I was trying to replace. And obviously, I have several that unfortunately are not available any longer. But of those actually in print, they actually went ahead and sent me what they had in stock on hand. So I couldn't believe this. I wasn't expecting, I was just happy that they got my email. So I was hoping I would hear something back, so that way, I might be able to replace a few titles, or be able to actually tell anybody that asked me that I'd found out anything. But this was just unbelievable. So this isn't everything, unfortunately. There are 3 more titles that apparently they have in print as Warner Archive discs that they're gonna hunt around for, because they asked if if there's anything else that not included in here that I was still trying to replace. And I looked through, and obviously, not counting the titles that are not available in terms of they're not in print anymore. So they're going to apparently check around to see if they can find those 3. But again, this is amazing, because they actually were so nice to just go ahead and send me these. And I didn't have to go through any hassle of worrying about trying to ship back entire box sets and send back discs that were perfectly fine. And because I'd already done, I had, in my original email correspondence, I detailed everything. And of course, because, these were all purchased years and years and years ago, you obviously don't have your original receipt for a DVD box set from 2005 or 2006, or, DVD box sets that you may have gotten as a Christmas present. So it was just amazing that they did this. And again, no fanfare. I had no idea. This just showed up on my doorstep one day. So I'm just amazed. So Again, these are the Warner Archive MOD represses, and these are all titles that I had that were completely rotted and unplayable. So now I can actually finally replace all of these. And again, they are limited to what they have in stock and what's available. So I am just so blown away that they did this. And again, they were so nice about it, and I didn't have to go through all the rigmarole that I would have had to go through the first time. So again, you have to go into this understanding that they can only replace titles that they actually have in print and that are available, because they either have lost licenses or those discs are no longer manufactured. And because a lot are available as Warner Archive MODs, it is actually a lot easier, more feasible to do, because they can manufacture more of them, obviously. So to go over these really quickly, for those who haven't seen my previous video or who haven't looked at the list I compiled, which I'll also attach to this video as well, these are all, again, titles that I had go completely bad and were unplayable. So for the Gary Cooper Signature Collection, they replaced my copy of The Fountainhead, which is really great because I've been wanting to rewatch this for some time. Then from the Film Noir Classics Collection Volume 4, which is very tough to get these days, they used all the double feature discs, which are very prone to rot if they're made from the affected period. So they're able to replace 2 of the 3 double feature discs from that set, which again is very rare and hard to get these days. So they were able to replace the discs with Crime Wave and Decoy, and these are the same exact disc presentations as before, just as Archive MOD represses. And then also the double feature with Illegal and The Big Steal. They aren't able to replace the double feature disc with They Live by Night and Side Street, because, of course, They Live by Night was reissued by Criterion on Blu-ray. So those were the 3 double feature discs I had go bad in that set. So at least in that one, you can go for the Criterion Blu-ray, but I'll still have to try and find a non-rotted disc used of, or on eBay or somewhere, to try and get Side Street without problems. Then from the Errol Flynn Signature Collection Volume 2, which is how I first found I had this DVD rot problem, they're able to replace 3 of the titles in that set. So the masterpiece, The Charge of the Light Brigade, which drove me crazy because this was actually the film I pulled off the shelf to rewatch, because I was rewatching all the Errol Flynn titles I had, and all of a sudden found this was dead. So very happy to have this replaced. And again, even though they're archive discs, these are the same disc presentation, so they of course still have the entirety of the supplemental features on here. Then another film that drove me crazy, that this one was rotted, where it would let you play a small portion of the feature and then freeze up and then just go completely dead. So I was able to get a new copy of Dive Bomber. So again, now I can finally finish the Errol Flynn marathon that I tried to start a number of years ago. And then they were also able to replace my copy of Gentleman Jim, the classic Flynn masterpiece, directed by Raoul Walsh. One of the titles that isn't here that they're still going to look for is the remake of The Dawn Patrol, and if I can get that replaced, that will take care of all the rotted discs that I had in the Flynn Volume 2 collection, which is one of the box sets that's the most affected by rot. I know some people have had copies where every film in the set is unfortunately rotted. And they even replaced my rotted copies of the Forbidden Hollywood volumes. If you have not gotten volumes 1 and 2 yet, please do yourself a favor and pick up the Warner Archive represses. I know they don't have the fancy digipack presentations of the originals, but these are completely rot-free. And unfortunately, I have rotted discs on both volumes 1 and 2. So I've told people who are looking at getting these, just because they've never gotten the Forbidden Hollywood sets before, get the archive pressings, even though they're just standard keep cases and MODs, because they will play back perfectly. So I was so happy that they included these, because I've been wanting to revisit these titles and I couldn't because they were bad off. So I was just, I'd been meaning to just grab reissues. So I'm so happy to finally have non-rotted copies. I should also stress the fact that the later volumes of the Forbidden Hollywood series were all released by Warner Archive as MODs anyway, and they have no issues whatsoever. I have about half the series overall. I still haven't gotten volume 3 yet. I don't know if the original pressing suffers from rot issues, but I know I will buy a archive copy just to make sure. But I know from 4 onwards, they're all Warner Archive, and they have 0 issues. I have 2 or 3 of the later volumes. I've been meaning to get the rest of the series anyway, but basically it's primarily just the original pressings of volume 1 and 2, perhaps 3, but I know for a fact 1 and 2 just avoid, so be sure and get the archive represses of those 2 volumes if you haven't gotten any of the sets yet. Then from the John Ford collection, they replaced my rotted copy of Mary of Scotland. This film doesn't have the greatest reputation, but it's really important if you're a Ford fanatic or if you're a great Katharine Hepburn fan, and the chemistry they had really shows up on the screen. Even though it doesn't have the greatest reputation, it's a really powerful film in places. So I really enjoyed it, and then of course was really sad to find that I then had to buy a replacement copy, and it's one of those titles that every time I found another copy, I was too leery of buying it, thinking it was probably going to be another rotted disc. But it's also nice on the archive release. It's actually got the original poster art, whereas the original DVD did not. So that's a nice little bonus. The same goes for the film Dragon Seed, which was rotted in my copy of the Katharine Hepburn Anniversary Collection box set. This film also doesn't have the greatest reputation and is one of those that's a tough pill to swallow because you have obviously non-Asian actors in heavy makeup playing Asian characters. If you can deal with that, it is, there are some things to recommend in it. It is rather long, unfortunately, but that it is a very steep hill to get over in terms of getting into this film. But it does have its good moments, and I'm now finally able to rewatch it again because it was the one disc in the Katharine Hepburn box set that I had that was totally rotted. They then were able to replace the 3 affected titles I had in the Burt Lancaster Signature Collection. So one of my favorites, The Flame and the Arrow, they were able to replace, and beautiful original artwork, and this is the same disc presentation as the original, just in the archive repressing. They were also able to replace His Majesty O'Keefe, again the same disc, just the archive version, and South Sea Woman. The other title I had that went bad in that set was the biopic Jim Thorpe All-American, and that was one of the 3 titles I had to write back. And I don't think that one is available as a Warner Archive disc, so unfortunately that might be a title that they don't have in terms of being able to replace it. But thankfully 3 of the 4 was available, and they did find those. So I guess that'll probably be one more that I'll still have to try and track down a replacement on my own. I'm really happy about this one because this is one of my favorite films that never gets discussed enough, and unfortunately doesn't have a Blu-ray, and that's the Sidney Lumet masterpiece starring Sean Connery, 1965's The Hill. I have the Laserdisc of this film, and I had the DVD, and unfortunately the DVD was one I had that had gone totally bad. So it was wonderful to get this replacement. Again, it's the same artwork and everything, and has the same extras package as the original disc I have that does not play it at all now. This is a title a lot of us, myself included, hope the Warner Archive does in a Blu-ray release with a new scan, because it could really just knock your socks off on Blu-ray. But I am very happy to, at least for the time being, finally be able to watch it on DVD again, and then supplement it with my Laserdisc copy as well. But this one, I'm so happy that I now don't have to deal with my rotted disc anymore. And then lastly, they sent me 2 titles that they really didn't have to, but it was so nice of them to do. I have been upgrading to Blu-ray where possible, as we all try and do. So fortunately, some of the discs that I had that had gone bad, I had already upgraded to Blu-ray, or that was a possibility. Titles like Dog Day Afternoon, for example. This one I had upgraded to the Warner Archive Blu-ray, but I included it in my list because the actual DVD had rotted, from the Sam Peckinpah Legendary Westerns collection. And again, thankfully, the disc that had gone bad was one I had been able to upgrade to the Warner Archive Blu-ray. So this was a nice bonus. Again, I just included it in my list for completion's sake, but they sent me the Warner Archive DVD pressing of The Ballad of Cable Hogue, which is one of the most underrated titles in Sam Peckinpah's canon, and just a treasure trove for Peckinpah fans and Western enthusiasts. I didn't particularly need this, of course, because now I have the Warner Archive Blu-ray, but now I can actually have my Peckinpah box on the shelf, and it doesn't have a rotted disc in it. So again, they didn't have to send me this, but it was a really nice gesture that they did. And for those who want a DVD version of this instead of the Blu-ray, and if your disc has gone bad, you can replace it with the archive version. Then the other one they sent that they technically didn't have to, the only title I included in my list that I had actually looked at and the disc itself had yellowed, was a disc in the Randolph Scott triple feature collection that Warner did in, I believe it was 2007. And discoloration doesn't always happen, but it's not a good sign. And I checked the disc itself, and the feature played through, but I figured it was probably a matter of time since the disc had already yellowed, whether it would go bad or not. So I included it in my original email correspondence and list because I figured it was probably going to go bad, but since it hadn't gone bad, I figured I would probably have to wait until it died or, obviously was unplayable before I could try and get a replacement. So it was another surprise to see that they actually included the archive repressing of the film, so I don't have to worry about that. So they included the Randolph Scott Western Fort Worth, which again is the film in that triple feature set that was on the disc that had yellowed and was probably going to go bad. So this was a really nice gesture for them to do. So that means they actually took the time to read my email and look at the list I had made, and when I got it down to the titles that I had that I needed to replace that were still available. Again, there are 3 more titles that they originally said 2 years ago in the correspondence I did that were available that they're gonna check on. So hopefully they can find those, and then I can be pretty much set on most of the titles. Again, this takes care of most of the discs that I had that were affected, and I am still blown away that they just went ahead and sent me replacement copies. So I made sure to write them back immediately and thank them. And it definitely was nice after not hearing anything for 2 years and then only seeing more and more people run into this particular issue. So I definitely told them I would forward anyone else with this issue who asked me about it to their email and make a video. That's why I'm doing this. So definitely, if you have any rotted DVDs from the affected period of roughly 2006 to 2009 or so, or if you've run into this issue with any Warner Brothers DVD in terms of the feature not working, the disc being totally dead, the extras not working, please write into the Warner Home Video email, the contact@whv.com, which is the new email. They are very, very fast at getting back to you. And again, I had no idea this was on its way to me. And then just 2-3 days later, there's just this box on my doorstep, and I'm still amazed. So I'd pretty much given up hope at this point because I hadn't heard anything for 2 years, and I thought if I got a response, I was going to have to go through the same thing again. And I tried to be as straightforward as possible, and I think it definitely helped me doing more detective work and then trying to piece everything together and trying to come up with, ideas for potential solutions, and also understanding that obviously they can't replace everything because not everything is in print anymore. But I certainly didn't expect it to be this easy and to just get a big box one day. So it was wonderful after 2 years of just scratching my head and not having any answers and not hearing anything. So I totally encourage everyone who has had this issue, please contact Warner Home Video and let them know what titles you have affected. Again, this is specifically for rotted DVDs from factory manufacturing issues. This is not for discs that are simply, have issues because they're scratched up or things of that nature. This is just because specifically of the rotting disc issue. If you hadn't heard of this before, please go and take a look at the video I made before this point where I originally went over the issue and compiled a list of every every known affected title. Again, I will include that list here as well, but I think people who are aware of this have already run into this particular issue themselves. So, and thankfully, it does seem relatively confined to the titles I was able to compile the list of. So, even though it's a range of years, it seems to be relatively locked to particular box sets. So what I would encourage everyone to do again, contact Warner Home Video, let them know the titles you have affected, and I'm pretty sure they themselves already know the rough section of their back catalog from the DVD era that this is a particular issue for. And we're all mostly talking about the same discs anyway, because they're the particular rotters that have gone bad. So you will be able to get replacement MOD copies where available. And again, they are very nice, straightforward, and extremely fast. So again, I had no idea there was a box on its way to me with a big stack of archive replacement DVDs. So I am just so thankful for their wonderful response and extremely quick response time. So again, after 2 years of not hearing anything, that was just it's a night and day difference. I did not expect this at all. So I still can't believe it. So that's why I wanted to make a video to give everyone an update, because I have been asked a lot in comment sections and in emails and various correspondence in different places, people asking me, because no one's really gone into this. That's why I made a video in the first place, and that's why I took the time to try and compile a list of every title that people have had issues with, so that way everybody can check their own collections, because it's not a fun thing to pull a disc off the shelf and then it doesn't work, and then you pull another disc off the shelf and that doesn't work, and then you have a bunch of discs in a box that doesn't work, and then you start checking every disc. And I did a whole panic check of every Warner Brothers disc I could think of from that affected period, and then all of a sudden my little stack of these aren't good, and then that got bigger and I get it bigger, and then all of a sudden I had a stack, and I'm like, oh dear, this isn't good. So anyway, I just want to close this by saying thanks to Warner Home Video for getting back to me and sending me a whole box of replacements. I'm just, again, I still can't believe it. So I encourage everyone, just take the time, write a nice email and detail the titles you have problems with. And again, one specifically only to disc rot. And they will get back to you, and they will let you know what titles are available and which ones are unfortunately out of print that they won't be able to replace. But again, I am just completely blown away by the turnaround in terms of response, because I did have to do a lot of back and forth emailing the first time, and I totally understood, and it made sense, going through the back and forth that you do anytime you have to contact a big studio division in terms of their customer service. But I was not looking forward to having to ship back all my old box sets and lose discs that were perfectly fine and be out the shipping money and that whole ball of red tape and rigmarole and things. So I certainly didn't expect to get replacements like that lickety split. So it was just, again, it was like Christmas morning. It was like, what is this box? I open it and I'm like, holy crap. So I encourage everyone, contact Warner Home Video. Hopefully they'll be able to take care of the titles you have affected. Hopefully you don't have too many that are out of print. And this takes care of most of the discs that I had affected. Again, they are apparently going to check for the other 3 that they may or may not have. But in any case, this makes it significantly easier and takes care of most of my discs with issues. So now I'm primarily just looking at the couple I have that are rare out of print titles, like the Tarzan films especially. Those that's the big one, particularly Volume 2. That is very expensive on the used market, and those films are totally out of print, and that's the only version you can go for. So that's going to be the most difficult one to replace, but thankfully this takes care of most everything else. So now I'm just down to trying to replace the last couple that are the films they aren't able to replace because they're out of print. So that's it for this video. It's definitely one I didn't think I was going to be able to make anytime soon, any sort of follow-up on the Warner Brothers DVD rot issue. So again, my great thanks to Warner Home Video for responding so quickly and just sending me replacement copies that I had already verified and everything, and again so fast that I didn't even expect it. So it's a total complete turnaround after not hearing anything at all. So again, to anyone with rotted DVDs, just go ahead and contact Warner Home Video. Let them know what you have in terms of affected titles, and hopefully they'll be able to get you taken care of as soon as possible. So as always, support studios and independent boutique labels. Keep physical media alive. Keep your disc spinning. And thanks ever so much for watching.